Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Sunday morning roundtable discussion on the topic of spirit. We are so grateful you could join us today. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church, Independent, in Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. And we welcome you all. So we will start this morning with our morning prayer.
I'm reading from Collectania, page 108 and 119, very short excerpts from there. Look away from body to spirit. My being is spiritual. My life, my intelligence are spiritual. My senses are spiritual. My life is hid with Christ in God, and there is no other existence. God, good, spirit, is ever present, and man is his image and likeness. This is a rule that will solve any problem. Mary Baker Eddy.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. All right, Karen, our watching point.
Watch number 39. Watch lest when you perceive that the spiritual structure you are building seems to depend for its continued support upon a spiritual sense in you, which seems too frail, immature, and intangible to maintain it, you permit fear and doubt to cause you to believe that this spiritual sense has been smothered or is likely to be. In reality, man's desire for God and his ability to find him and to reflect him are qualities which materiality can never impair. The error is wholly a trick of deception that claims to blind one as to where to find God and as to the nature of the error that claims to hide him. The argument that our spiritual nature has been or can be smothered is a trick of animal magnetism. Is the reflecting power of a mirror impaired by the dust that falls on it?
Thank you. Right, comments on that?
Well, the sentence that says, in reality, man's desire for God and his ability to find him and to reflect him are qualities which materiality can never impair. That's been helping me since I've come here to Plainfield, but it's comforting to know that is natural ability of man, is to have that connection with that oneness, have that sense of oneness with their maker, our maker, and materiality, which cannot do anything to disturb that or separate it, or so that's been helpful for me to know that.
Thank you.
I think it happens to most of us that we will sometimes feel that we can't hear God, or we can't feel, or we don't feel close to God. This is a very common occurrence. There are stories in the Bible where the king, where God left the king. He didn't feel close to God. He couldn't hear God anymore. But that's when the dust is covering the mirror. And what you have to do then is you have to blow the dust off of the mirror. You have to wipe it off the mirror, which means you have to get to your books and study the truth until the truth becomes imperative in your consciousness. Because the truth is what God is. And that clears the dust off the mirror. This is work. It's not like you turn on a switch and then all of a sudden God is there. No, this is work. And the work is to clear your consciousness of the false beliefs with the truth. And that's why we have to study every day. Mrs. Eddy had to study every day. Jesus had to go into the wilderness and pray often, regularly. But it's not a fundamental losing when you don't feel God's presence. There's nothing fundamental about that. It's just the lie trying to cover up your receptivity to the truth. And you rise in rebellion against it. And you study the truth until it comes clearly again.
Yeah, and that's why every evening before you go to bed, you should ask yourself, if you're holding any resentments or anything like that, that would impede your ability to hear God's voice or feel His oneness. And clear, we call it clearing your slate, or keeping your window clean, to make sure that you are always receptive to the Father's voice. And when you let that build up and build up and build up, then you get into a state of, perpetual anxiety because you haven't kept your slate clean. It's much easier to do it day by day than to let it build up. Who else was trying to speak?
I was. I also feel that, she gave us a scientific statement of being, which is changeless. And I love where it says, man is the image and likeness of God. It's not only sometimes, but at all times. And to me, it really helps to remind myself always, who am I? I am reflecting God, His power, His presence, everything, all His nature. So this gives the power to continue to know that, no, He is here with me. I am reflecting His spiritual sense. Because always, I don't know enough, maybe I should, then it starts with a problem again. Instead of just humbly knowing all the time this changeless truth that Mrs. Eddy gave us, that we are His image and likeness, therefore spiritual, and we have all that God has for us to know about Him and how He operates in our lives.
Thank you very much. In Collectania, and I've given this before, but it's wonderful, where Mrs. Eddy says, take this thought and carry it with you. God is spirit. I am His child, made in His likeness. Jesus' teachings will restore to me that which I seem to have lost, the likeness of my Father. And that gets back to what Gary was saying. Jesus' teachings, yes, we study the Bible, study science and health. Anything, if you feel that feeling of, you're not at one with the Father, yes, get to your books and get back to it, and you will find yourself feeling that sense of oneness and hearing His voice. Now, I read this last week. Go ahead. Did you want to say something? Someone?
Yes, thank you, Gary, for that is the best explanation I have heard. And also, I'm grateful that I learning, especially in Christian Science, that we can never be separated from God. Well, this is the Bible and most denominations really, but not only that, but that the only way that we can be separated in some way from God is in our thinking. And this is something that is not commonly explained anywhere. I just heard it when Christian Science came a blessing to my life. And it's so important to know that we can never be separated from God anyway. But only in our thinking we do that. And so it was great to hear this is okay. There's no problem because we can get back to it by doing all the great things that Gary explained so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this is from Normal Living by Peter V. Ross that Candy had sent to us. I read it last week, but it's so significant, where he writes, Napoleon looked for lucky generals, so it is said, by which he meant those generals who do not associate defeat with their campaigns. There are plenty of people today to whom the thought of failure or sickness seldom occurs. They are not lucky, they are normal. Divine mind diffuses spiritual ideas in man, thoughts of strength, confidence, gladness, plenitude. Listen for them and act upon them. Hear, O Lord, is the commandment, is it not? We are not lacking resources, stamina, and ability, but lacking appreciation of their presence. Assurances of present abundance are not far-fetched. Think them out and dwell upon them, whether they pertain to career, home, or health. Put forth industrious effort to bring these assurances to pass. Then will this supposedly grudging world begin to yield more bountifully. Spiritual law is made operative in human affairs. So it's lacking the appreciation of their presence. I love that. Always with us. It's always here. God's always speaking. Just be grateful for it and listen. Hear, O Israel. That's right. Is that not the commandment? And then this is on our website by Gilbert Carpenter. It's called Listening to God. If you ever expect to hear the voice of God, you must accept the fact that his voice is right now sending out its messages continuously, and doing this because you possess a capacity to hear it. Man does receive and hear the voice of God when he seeks it and makes the effort to gain it, but he is not conscious of having done so until a need arises. When he voices that which he himself never knew, then he knows that it is God talking through him. So, when you seek to hear God's voice and do not seem to do it, don't be disappointed. Every day make the effort to open your thought and let God talk to you. And if you do not hear it with your material ears, or even conscious of it with your conscious thought, take it on faith. Believe that it is being recorded on the tablet of your mind, that you are laying up treasures in heaven in your spiritual consciousness. And when the right time comes, you will be able to give it out and know what God has been saying to you by what you say to another. And I know many of you have had that experience of, something will come to you and you didn't think of it because you didn't think of it. It's something you never thought of, and it'll just come. That is for sure God speaking, if it's thoughts of goodness and kindness.
And that also goes with filling needs. If you feel like you have a need, whether it's personal or financial or some other, or health need, whatever, and you pray and you open your heart, if the fulfillment of that need doesn't come right away, don't give up and don't be discouraged. Because God provides our needs when we are ready and when we need them. He does not provide them before we need them. So in a way, it's kind of a test of our faith in God. When we feel like we have a need and it just doesn't show up, when we want it, be patient. Have trust in God, and the need will be fulfilled at the right time.
In the meantime, you are learning something. There is something that you're learning all the time. That's what's been my experience.
And having many demonstrations along the way. Be mindful of it, grateful.
Mm-hmm.
I found it interesting. It was a watching point we had a few weeks ago. I don't have it to hand, but it starts out that Gilbert Carpenter is saying the whole reason that we do any of this, all this studying and everything, is so that we come to have complete trust in God. I think about that a lot. That's our goal. That's to have complete trust. And then it goes on. It's that beautiful quote from Mrs. Eddy about become like a little child, taking the Father's hand and trusting the Father. But a good question to ask yourself during the day: where is my trust? Complete trust and faith in the Father, in our Father. So anyone else?
I was going to say, I think what got God is. I'm saying that it's not fundamental that God is said to think that we are not in the presence of God. We are separate. And this kind of thought very often comes to us when things doesn't work out the way we want it, or when ourselves in a situation wasn't going well. That thought comes telling you, oh, you're something other than all God made you. Well, place where God cannot reach you. And when he was talking about that, as soon as after God said that, the thought came to me. I remember a while ago. That was 20 years ago when I was a missionary, middle of desert. We were traveling. So that travel kind of going to the middle of the night. Yeah, and then so the temperature dropped very, very low that night. I wasn't prepared for it because I've never been in that house. But I didn't even have blankets, none of us. So we were worried. I thought I was going to lose my life that night. But I started to realize that I wasn't in a place where God cannot reach me. I started realizing that I was out doing my father's work. There's no way that God will let me. That thought of presence of God with me, with us, that to provide me the needed temperature. That moment, not just for me, but with my friends who were with me traveling that night. We survived the night. I think it was that thought of God that allowed us to know what we were out about doing his work. There's no way God will forsake you at any moment. So I think that's what, and that's what is fundamental. The other is not. Very good.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Benjamin.
Could I add something to
Yes.
this? Makes me think very much of when May I was in a situation where I was in the mountains and was not able, no key was available for me to get in, and I remember that my practitioner told me about love. It seemed like I was in a place that was considered haunted to human thought, and I kept saying to myself, because it was very dark, I couldn't read, and the internet didn't work, my phone didn't work. I kept saying to myself, there is no place where God is not. I am so grateful that God is, and I kept holding to that, and whatever thoughts would come to me to say the opposite, I was able to live through that. I'm really, really grateful because it gave me more of a sense of humility. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Zary. Thank you. Anyone else on this?
I'd like to add just a little bit. Isn't there, I think there's something in the Bible where it says God made man to hear his voice.
Yes.
I'm not that's not an exact quote, but that always helped me feel like he made me to hear his voice, and sometimes I don't easily. And the other thing that helps, what I remember, is that I need to be quiet to be able to listen.
Thank you.
Very good point. Yeah, and your ability to hear God's voice is fundamental because you are the manifestation of God on earth. How can you not hear his voice? You can only not hear his voice when you're putting stuff in the way, when you're believing false beliefs, or when you're disobeying him, or something else. That's the only thing that blocks your hearing.
Thank you. Before we get into the lesson, I just wanted to mention our new liberator that Carol is working on is on the 5th commandment, honoring your father and mother. And, we were both thinking, oh boy, well, how are we going to get anything interesting? Very interesting on this. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but But it turns out our Carrie and Louise, who they found wonderful articles. It's a very, very deep subject in ways that I never realized. So it's just going to be a wonderful magazine. And I'm so grateful because so many of you more are now getting it, accessing it, reading it, because it is truly wonderful, our Liberator magazine. And this one is going to be a blockbuster. Right, Carol?
You bet, it is.
And also, just to clarify, and Carol knows this, and Carrie too, the copyright date is 1930. I think she said August. Anything before that we can copy on our website or put on our website. Anything after that we can't under their copyright, the organization. So 1930. It changes every year. We get an added year. So, all right. Well, thank you all. And Jeremy, would you do the golden text?
Yeah. John, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth.
Thank you. So, what does that mean to you to worship God in spirit and in truth? Anyone?
Well, I feel like it means to translate matter into spirit, to realize that it's only spirit that we're dealing with every day and every moment. And so to be grateful for that spirit, in other words, not your material house as far as boards and mortar and brick, but to see that it is security and it's comfort and it's beauty, and just to translate things over to God as God made them.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
It also means to me that you have to know the truth about God and man. You know, there's a lot of untruth out there about, you know, God made us, you know, perfect, but we've sinned. So, I mean, understanding what's true about us is worshiping God in truth. Because if you're worshiping the false belief, or believing something that's untrue about yourself or untrue about God, then you're not going to get very far.
Thank you, Lenny.
That's a good point. Yeah, worshiping God in spirit, it used to puzzle me what that meant. But I think what it means is that you think of the synonyms for God. Every one of them is a spiritual concept. Not one of them is a material thing, right? So we can't ever think of God as a material thing, and we can't worship material things. We can't worship a person. We can't worship a bank account. We can't worship anything or a graven image. You know, I mean, there were times when, you know, people carved things out of stone and worshiped them, believe it or not. To totally accept and understand that God is spirit. In fact, Mrs. Eddy somewhere says that the correct translation of the original language did not have the word a in front of spirit. It translates literally, God is spirit, not God is a spirit. The translators kind of, you know, didn't have it all right when they translated it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is something Carrie sent, and this is Carrie's quoting from this article called The Real Man by Helen Ward Banks. And she says, Mrs. Eddy's declaration at the end of the scientific statement of being, spirit is God and man is his image and likeness. Therefore, man is not material, he is spiritual, end quote. And then in this article, there's an example given of a great artist, Raphael, and a portrait he painted, an original, that came over And over time, people made changes to it until it didn't look like his painting anymore. Then came a person who saw through all the changes and used, quote, a solvent to remove the false covering of the paint, to reveal the original real portrait. Such is the real spiritual man made in God's image and likeness, which over time, false beliefs are obscuring. Mrs. Eddy saw the real man and gave us the solvent of love, spiritual understanding, to use to reveal the real man who was hidden. I remember hearing that story, I think even in Sunday school, that beautiful portrait who gets all dirty and dusty, and when you clean it, you see what's truly there. And this is our work, to look through the mask. And I don't care how vile the picture might seem to be, how awful it might look. Right there is the presence and power of God, because all is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation. So you look through the mask, the disguise, and see the real man. We quote often, Jesus beheld in science the perfect man, who appeared to him where sinning mortal man appears to mortal. In this perfect view, our Savior saw God's own likeness, and this correct view of man healed the sick. Powerful statement. So this is seeing in spirit. And don't get too bogged down with, matter. People get so bogged down with the matter. Just think of the enduring the good and the true. Keep your thought uplifted, and pretty soon you will see in this material world heaven on earth, God everywhere, in everyone, in all things. So again, it's a task we must lovingly accept to take each day. That's a paraphrase, but she says. And I do love that story about the portrait. There's another article Carrie sent, and this I had recently seen. I think it was on Netflix or something. It was about Mount Everest. These people climbing this mountain. Anyway, this article brings out how over deep chasms they would put these rope bridges. I mean, and this was true on Mount Everest. I don't know how they did it. The Sherpers, I guess they called them, put these rope bridges over these huge, deep chasms full of ice and snow, and then the people had to walk across it to the other side. And this article brings out that, if you look down, my gosh, it's not a good idea. So to look up, always look up, and that's what we were just talking about. Look up, see the face of God. Look up. Don't focus on the problem. Just like in the story of Peter and the storm, remember? So well portrayed in The Chosen. He was walking on the water and looking into the eyes of Christ Jesus. He was doing just fine. And then what happened?
He looked down. He looked away from him.
He started to look at the storm, and then he panicked and started to sink. It takes discipline. Bring every thought into captivity to Christ. But it's required of us. Look up. Look at the Father at the most terrifying times. I was reading about the guy that goes over and the things he did. Holy camoli! I think it said he fried egg. He fried an egg on there, and then he would even walk on stilts. I mean, he did the incredible things. I think that was during Mrs. time too, wasn't it? Didn't she mention? Anyway, it was quite something, and so fearless. That's why sometimes I like to watch those kind of shows. It shows how they overcome every fear, and they have to have complete focus on achievement and getting whatever they're trying to achieve done. That allows for no, zero, zippo negativity. The one we watched recently was Free Solo. This guy, he climbs up El Capitan without any ropes. The whole thing. But, you know, he practiced it and practiced it. He knew it like the back of his hand. He knew just where to put his hands. And El Capitan, if you've ever seen it, it is like sheer, massive granite. Straight up and down. There's no, like, places really to put your feet, little tiny things sticking out. So it just showed what can be accomplished if you focus and don't let negativity or fear enter your thought. And don't look down. So those are good analogies.
I think, Mary, do you remember Mrs. Evans, I think, talked about someone in Rome, I think, looking up, step forward, kneel down, and look up.
Yes,
so the humility part of it, I think that needs.
Yes, a beautiful story. Yeah, it was some statue, and most people couldn't see what the statue was portraying. And a little boy said, you have to step forward, kneel down, and look up. And then you could see the most beautiful face, I think it was.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. So step forward, get out of your rut, get up out of your chair, go forward, kneel down, total helplessness without God, total humility, and then look up. And you'll see whatever it is you need to see, those 3 steps.
See the face of God.
Yes.
Yes.
Isn't that our only task? Not just as Christian Science. This is real, spiritual man, spiritual world. So man, ask. I mean, if you can accomplish that at the end of the day, you can actually rest. It could be simple. Sometimes it could be very difficult. That's our
Very much. You know, talking about the solvent, what is a solvent?
It's love.
Dissolves what you don't want.
Thank you.
You're thinking about it.
Yes. And on page 242 in Science Health, Mrs. Eddy says, self-love is more opaque than a solid body. Impatient obedience to a patient God. Let us labor to dissolve with the universal solvent of love, the adamant of error. What is it?
Self-love, self-justification, and self-will.
Thank you. But that's right. It's self-justification and self-love. So whoever says that, good for you. Which wars against spirituality and is the law of death. All the selves. And Evans used to say, and I could see where she was right, where mental illness is usually an extreme case of self. Self-will, yeah, often all of them, and self-love, thinking too much about themselves. And if you can break that with the solvent of love, healing takes place. But watch for that. And you can see, I mean, I see with myself, as I've said, my idea of hell is self-absorption or thinking too much about your own life. Awful. Break free of that, where Christian Science comes to free us. Talked about it on the lesson of love. The main purpose of Christian Science is to love. Love others, not just be thinking about yourself. Right? Very freeing.
I think also that the worst part of it is that you are so adamant that you're doing just fine without God. And I think that's what the world is struggling with right now, is that we're doing just fine. We don't need God. And that's what we're facing today in every nation, every people, is that. And when I'm watching this program, Jesus, Game Changer, twice now I've heard other countries. He goes all over the world, but twice I've heard from other countries. The church in the West, meaning us, this country, is declining, while so many other parts of the world, it is growing. But in the West, where there's so much wealth, and we don't think we need God anymore, and that's the worst part of this self. I'm just fine, thank you very much.
Thank you. But we're finding out by getting around that we're not so fine.
Yeah, I think it's changing. People are finding they can't go on without him. I mean, how can you go on without him? Yeah.
It's inevitable. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
You can only fool yourself for so long before reality wakes up.
And, when people think they can run from it or escape to some, climate, some wonderful place to live or gated communities, they can't. It's happening everywhere, people. You can't run from it.
That's a lot.
Yeah. You stay where you are and work it out with God. And, Jeremy, you tell them about, which we've talked about before, but I loved it so much, that movie, Amazing Love.
Oh, yes, about Hosea. And Hosea went into the marketplace and he was talking to one of the shopkeepers and he was telling them how they needed God. And he said, well, our gods are doing just fine by us. And like not long later, all of them were slaves. So
And they all became slaves. They wouldn't listen to the prophet. And that is what happens. Eventually, you become slaves if you don't want to listen to truth. And it's not that God does it to you; it's your turning from Him. It does it. Something will take over, and you will become a slave. Now we read in the Bible, even in those difficult situations, many wonderful things for those who, like Daniel and Joseph and others, who knew their God. They were protected and healed and blessed. But who needs to go through that? Please, let's not have history repeat itself.
Yeah.
But yes, Americans had so much blessing. If they keep it alive and awake, that's fine. But if they go to sleep with it, not fine. And Mrs. Eddy said when asked what would happen, I think it was just even without her, but without her example, without people realizing that she was the woman in the apocalypse, she said Christian Science would
degenerate into material prosperity.
No, yikes. And many, many examples of Christian scientists being extremely wealthy. It's happened, folks. It still is happening. And if this was the goal of the scientists to get humanly happy, humanly rich, self-satisfied, and we've lost it. Entirely lost. So, wake-up call. Now, anybody else want to comment on that?
Well, I wanted to say the slavery of this time is the voices in your head that are telling you, the wrong thing. You're a slave to them if you're listening. They just get more and more intense and more derogatory and negative. And the way to not be a slave is to only listen to the good voices.
Thank you very much. Yes. And this is the ultimate slavery. It's the slavery of mortal mind. Mrs. Eddy says that, the mortal mind, that's the tendency of mortal mind, to rule, dominate, and enslave, whether it's in your thinking or then in your life itself. So.
And that is also, and that is the warfare that we are currently in, isn't it? Propaganda. That's the Communist Manifesto, right? They will enslave everybody without having to fire a gun. Do it mentally. And they're doing it, aren't they?
And Mrs. Eddy does warn about that, especially in first edition. Things will happen. No one has to enter your home physically to do these things. And it was once said that only the reason the communists wanted to get Christian Scientists particularly and bring it down was they were the only ones who couldn't be hypnotized, knowing their oneness thought and their one mind. And that should be the truth about all of us, that we cannot be hypnotized. But if you're not so, and then you believe things that aren't true. And as Mrs. Eddy says, in ways that are vain, you trust those you shouldn't trust and don't trust those you should. Who else was trying?
Also,
okay, go ahead.
Oh, sir. I just wanted to mention, it seems that we are, especially like the westernized world, is very comfortable in matter, and they think that matter will solve their problems. You know, now with AI, it's now going to think for us too, and so everyone is just rushing towards this sort of dependence and almost worship of our material-made solutions. And I think as a Christian Scientist, we kind of realize there are no real solutions in the material world, and most people don't realize that. And as they get more and more into the dependence and adoration of matter, they're losing whatever sense of spirituality they might have been able to hold on to. And it you know, societal wise, it just kind of makes us these godless people that are you know, no moral compass, no sense of right, and not really caring about it. So there's nothing good in it, and no matter how charming or seductive it might be, and I think that's kind of what, you know, when Mrs. Eddy, I think she mentioned once, talking to a violinist, she said, keep your violin in tune, you know, just keeping your spirituality, your sense of spiritual oneness with God always present, kind of what was talked about earlier. And I think that's kind of what as Christian Scientists, people, we need to do, and never kind of accept just like a false sense of peace with the material world.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes. And Mrs. Eddy refers to matter as sometimes beautiful, but always what?
Erroneous.
Always erroneous.
Exactly.
So yes.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think that statement by Mrs. Eddy, man governed by God is self-governed, just recently it has had so much more impact. It is such a profound statement. And that is our only freedom from all of this. Man governed by God is self-governed. We don't need anybody or anything to govern us, but only when we're governed by God. And I've read that my whole life, but all of a sudden, recently, it has meant so much more, and is our only pathway out of all this.
Thank you. Yes.
That's why the American Revolution and the Constitution of the United States of America is unique, and it was the only real revolution, because it established a government whose primary purpose was to protect man's relationship with God.
Yes.
That was its primary purpose, and this is what we are here to defend and to make sure, because of course they're twisting and turning and changing these things. Because when that's in effect, everything will be okay. When we lose that, it gets misinterpreted, then we're in for trouble.
Yeah. But see, the founding fathers understood that concept that you just mentioned, that man is governed first by God. So the human government is to protect that right.
Yes.
It's been getting turned backwards. So.
And the devil would like to change Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's up to us not to let that happen.
Now, in the reading, talks about there's no condemnation to them who are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. And a couple of weeks ago, I think it was on Andrea, who gave a beautiful testimony about removing the stain. Probably remember that, about someone who was doing wrong, and she spent several hours praying, and she saw it as removing a stain, like you would remove a stain on piece of material where you would keep blotting it out, right? And and in that prayer, then the next day, that person was totally changed and healed. It's very powerful, and she quotes an article by Paul Stark Seeley, and again, this is from a 1943 Christian Science journal, so we can't put it up, but it's called "The Christ Blots Out Mistake and Penalty," and it starts with a net in which many mortals become entangled is the belief that because they have made a serious mistake, they must suffer indefinitely a penalty. It may be a bad investment with years of resulting recrimination, a moral lapse that seems to have cast a darkening cloud on life's way, a domestic or business partnership unwisely entered into with consequent friction and thwarted hopes, an ill-chosen vocation leading to disappointment and a feeling that one's life has been a failure, crime committed, followed seems to be an unerasable stigma. I'm sure many of us can identify with the list of problems. So, but in science, and it's certainly in Science and Health, where study says the penalty does not remain when what?
When the sin is destroyed.
Yes. You are repentant, and then you have reformed, and then the penalty is lifted, because God knows no condemnation. He doesn't. He's the God of love. And it quotes, and this is a very important chapter in Miscellany, Unity of Good, that is called it for many. It says, our loving leader, Unity of Good, page 20, says, how is a mistake to be rectified? By reversal or revision, by seeing it in its proper light, and then turning it or turning from it. Very important to understand this. Mrs. Evans used to say this was her father's favorite in prose works. So, and it, Paul Stark Seeley also writes, no one should write on the screen of consciousness his own or another's mistakes with an indelible pencil. They and there would be penalties dissolved and disappear before the recognition of the allness of that saving love, which erased so completely any sense of mistake and penalty from the life of Magdalene, turned Paul so completely from his mistaken course of persecution, and enabled Peter, after his denial of his Lord, so to correct his unfaithfulness as to receive from his master the Holy Commission, feed my sheep. These great characters were willingly humble, honest, courageous, turned to God and his Christ to find there the spiritual idea of life and man, the antidote for any and all of mistakes and penalties. So, I don't know any of us who haven't made some mistakes, not major mistakes. So there's hope for everybody, as long as we do. Forbidden. Oh, whoops. Okay. Much more to talk about, but time to end. And so Gary will end with this beautiful testimony, also sent to us by Gary.
Okay, this is Irving Tomlinson, entitled An Interesting Testimony. Read the whole thing.
Read the whole thing.
Okay, he writes, My dear leader, I take pleasure in giving you a testimony from Mrs. Allen, wife of General C. Allen of Los Angeles, California. Mrs. Allen is a member of Second Church of Christ Scientists of that city, and her home is such and such. All that Mrs. Allen could tell me of the patient was that his name was Carter, and that he worked for the City of London Company of Los Angeles. Mrs. Allen's impression is that Mr. Carter is now in San Francisco. Testimony is as follows.
Yes, so this is a testimony that was told to Irving Tomlinson, and he wrote it up and sent it to Mary Baker Eddy because the person who was healed gave the credit to Mrs. Eddy. So this was the testimony.
Right. So he writes, 2 years ago, I had a man come to my house to repair some window shades in the parlor. When he had finished his work, I asked him to come to my study. I left him in my room for a time, and when I returned, he said, I see that you are a Christian Scientist, because he saw my literature in the room. Then he said, I was healed by the discoverer and founder of Christian Science, Mrs. Mary Baker Eddy. I said, I want you to tell me all about it. Then he gave me these facts. About 18 years ago, while living in Boston, I fell from the third story of a building on which I was working to the pavement. My leg was broken in 3 places. I was taken to a hospital where they tried to help me. They said that the leg was so bad that it would have to be amputated. I said, no, I would rather die. They permitted it to heal as best it might, and as a result, I had to wear an iron shoe 8 or 9 inches high. I was called to Mrs. Eddy's home on Commonwealth Avenue in Boston to do some light work. Mrs. Eddy came into the room where I was busy and, observing my condition, kindly remarked, I suppose you expect to get out of this sometime. I answered, no. All that can be done for me has been done, and I can now manage to get around with a cane. Mrs. Eddy said, sit down and I will treat you. When she finished the treatment, she said, you go home and take off that iron shoe and give your leg a chance to straighten out. I went home and did as I was told, and now I am so well that so far as I know, one leg is as good as the other. End quote.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
you.